Today's big show is on the causes of the Great Depression. This is our first lecture for the Great Depression unit. So there's a couple big ideas that I want to get at in this lecture. One was, what was the Great Depression? And secondly, what caused the Great Depression? Hopefully you'll be able to answer those two questions, at least on some level, when we're done. What was the Great Depression? It was the deepest and longest lasting economic downturn in the history of the Western industrialized world. It lasted from 1929 through 1939. In the United States, the Great Depression began soon after the stock market crash of October 1929, which sent Wall Street into a panic and wiped out millions of investors. But really, I want to talk about 6 causes of the Great Depression: low interest rates, overproduction, uneven distribution of wealth, high tariffs, falling demand, and stock market speculation. And I'm going to explain each of these 6 things in turn. First of all, with low interest rates, the Federal Reserve kept interest rates low. Companies borrowed money and expended more than necessary. When you can borrow money cheaply, many see that as an opportunity to make money by borrowing, and businesses expand production. The problem with expanding production, if you're not selling what you're producing, you have a problem, which leads to overproduction. Companies made more goods than could be sold. Regarding the uneven distribution of wealth, there was too much wealth was controlled by too few people. Not everyone who wanted consumer goods could afford them. If you are very, very wealthy, yes, you can buy expensive automobiles, but that's not going to drive the automobile industry. The automobile industry, for example, is fueled by people who buy lots of cars, just those of us who need basic transportation. There was significant uneven distribution of wealth in the 1920s. Also in the 1920s were very high tariffs, and tariffs restricted foreign demand for American goods. A brief review: remember, a tariff is a tax on imports. And when we tax some other country's products to make them more expensive so Americans don't buy them, the problem is they will turn around and tax our products, making it harder to sell our things to other countries. And see the last item on overproduction, this amplifies that problem. Falling demand. With too many goods unsold, production was cut back and employees were laid off. Again, this problem now is compounding an earlier problem. So we want to sell more stuff, but because we have a surplus of supplies, I don't need as many workers. I lay those workers off. They have less money to buy stuff, which compounds my problem of my surplus. I can't sell anything then. And stock market speculation. Low interest rates encourage borrowing money to speculate, endangering bank solvency. Let me explain some of those terms. People would borrow money because interest rates were so low. People would borrow money to buy stock, to speculate. And when speculate means to kind of like gamble. When you buy stock in the stock market, buy stock in some company, all of your money is at risk. There is no guarantee you're going to make money. If you buy the wrong stock or invest in the wrong thing, you are going to lose money. You certainly can. Now, the reverse is true. If you buy the right stock, you can make a lot of money. But if you borrow money and that stock that you bought is the collateral for your loan, it's the security for the loan, and the company goes out of business and you lose all your money, you still have to pay the loan back. So to review, the 6 causes of the Great Depression: low interest rates, overproduction, uneven distribution of wealth, high tariffs, falling demand, and stock market speculation. So when the market crashed, it weakened the nation's banks in 2 ways. First, by 1929, banks had lent billions of dollars to stock speculators, as I just talked about. And secondly, many banks had invested depositors' money in the stock market hoping for high returns. You deposit your money in the bank. Your money that you've deposited in your savings or checking account is not sitting in a shoebox with your name on it. That bank takes that money because the bank is a business with the goal of making money, and they make money by lending money. Or in this case, they invest that money in the stock market. But if the stock market crashes, the money they have taken from your deposits and bought stock and is now gone. They've lost that, which means your money is lost. When stock values collapsed, banks lost money on their investments and speculators defaulted on their loans, which means they don't pay them back. Having suffered serious losses, many banks cut back drastically on loans. They couldn't loan any money out. They didn't have money to lend. They just refused not to. But remember, so what problem does that cause? If people were borrowing money to buy automobiles or homes or things like that, big ticket items, they would borrow money. Now they can't borrow the money. The money's not available, which means that demand is even lower and the surplus increases. The overproduction gets worse. With less credit available, consumers and businesses were not able to borrow as much money, sending the economy into recession. Some banks could not absorb the losses they suffered and had to close, which means that if you had money in that bank, you lost it. The government did not insure bank deposits, so if a bank failed, customers lost their savings. Persistent and heavy demands by bank depositors, creditors, or customers to withdraw money were called bank runs. A bank only has a small percentage of its investment of your savings and checking account money, a small percentage of the total of all the money that people deposit in that bank in the bank at any one time. If all of these people in the picture all were trying to get their money out, only the first few people are going to get money, and then the bank's going to run out of money and they must close their doors. So what was the Great Depression? Worst economic downturn, longest economic downturn in the history of Western civilization, and the 6 ideas that I just talked about is what caused it. Hoover's philosophy, he considered the Depression, Herbert Hoover was president during this time, he considered the Depression to be a temporary setback. And the problem with that idea is the term temporary. In the history of humankind, 10 years is rather temporary, but for most people living, 10 years is a long period of time. Hoover believed the way to economic recovery was through individual effort, not government assistance. You have to work harder to get out of this problem. Hoover said that government relief would inflate the federal budget, which it would. To give people money to help them in their poverty would increase the federal budget. Hoover said that the government giving help would reduce people's self-respect. That is a matter of debate. Yes, if the government spends more in relief, the budget would go up. What if it would reduce people's self-respect? That wouldn't have to be discussed further. Perhaps it would, perhaps it wouldn't. Hoover believed that success comes through individual effort and hard work, which seems reasonable. He referred to that as rugged individualism. Hoover called businesses leaders to Washington. He asked them to keep up production and not to lay off workers or cut wages. He called that volunteerism. Here is Hoover meeting with business leaders in various industries. I think you can predict what they, even if they agree in his office to not lay off workers and not cut wages and to keep up production, if their warehouses are filling up with product and they can't sell it, businesses will do what they need to do to stay in business. He also had this. He was filled with optimism. He issued cheerful public statements designed to boost confidence in the American public. The problem is, at the time, unemployment was soaring. He said the worst effects of the crash upon unemployment will have passed within the next 60 days. He said that March 3rd, 1930. But if you look at the graph pictured here, where March is the unemployment was at the time he talked about 9%, but by 1932 the unemployment rate reached almost 25%. Actually, the worst effects of the crash upon unemployment was not to have passed in 60 days. It would take almost 10 years. He did begin something known as the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, where he authorized to spend up to $2 billion to stabilize troubled banks, insurance companies, and railroad companies, help these big businesses. Not the individual people, but big businesses. And this is known as trickle-down economics. They didn't call it trickle-down economics at that time, but it's the idea that economic benefits provided to businesses and upper income levels will inevitably benefit poor members of society by improving the economy as a whole. You help these big companies that employ lots and lots of people. They will therefore go and hire more people and keep their business afloat and raise up the entire nation's economy. That is one economic theory, and that's what Hoover subscribed to. That's our big show for today.